Alright guys, you've seen the title. You know what we're talking about. We're talking about how to explode your network so that you have so many opportunities coming your way, you have no idea what to do with it. Now, I get this question a lot. It is, how do I grow my network? I'm currently, I just started university, I have nothing to offer. How can I meet amazing people? How do I get Tony Robbins to reply to me? How do I get Elon Musk to reply to me? I get all these questions, right? And it's a fair question. You may not have much to offer when you first start your career. But there are 3 things that you can do that are really simple and you don't really need to put in a lot of effort to make that happen, that can help you explode your network even if you're super young or you're moving into an industry that you know nothing about. And I'm going to get into those 3 tips right now. Tip number 1, ask great questions, okay? So I want to tell you a story about one of my previous interns, Daniel. He was amazing at asking questions and I have no idea, he's never really admitted it, and I don't even think he does it consciously. He's just really good at it. So the way that we met was that he would come to the talks and conferences I would do, and he would sit at the front and be super engaged with whatever I was talking about. And he would ask questions after every session. So whether it be publicly when I do the Q&A, he would put his hand up and ask a question, or maybe afterwards he would come up and ask a question. And they tended to be fairly insightful questions. Like I thought they were really interesting. They would ask about, how did you do X, Y, Z? Or like, how did you think about this? And it wasn't just the way that he asked questions. It was how interested he was in the answer. He was so curious about everything. And so by the time we got to the time where I was looking for an intern for the company I was at, his name came into the system and I was like, okay, I recognize him. He's got nothing to do with the skill set that we need. And we had a couple of candidates that were way more, I guess, relevant to the job. But as an intern, I'm not looking for someone who is like got 10 years experience. I'm looking for someone who has the ability to grow, learn, and do all these things. And so I decided to take a punt. I actually took 2 interns. I took him and I took another person who had way more of a track record in product or had done a lot of projects and kind of knew what was going on. And long story short, Daniel outperformed the other intern by a huge margin, and we ended up keeping him on. I ended up working with him for about 3-4 years. He did product management with that company and another company I was at, and also another company I started myself as well at EntryLevel. So you can kind of see how this inquisitive nature and being able to ask good questions was able to help him build this network. And I'll tell you another story. So when he would come to events with me, I would bring him along, and he would probably be the person that had the least skills or experience within the whole group. But everyone always wanted to talk to Daniel. They're like, oh, that Daniel guy is amazing. Like, what does he do? And I'm like, how do you not know? You've spoken to him for 45 minutes. And what I realized was that he wasn't actually talking about himself at all. He was just so curious and so interested. And he made the other person feel so valued that the other person just liked him automatically. And so one of the tips I would say is be really good at asking questions and be genuinely curious in the other person. That goes such a long way into building your network. So I actually have a question bank. So I collect questions because I think questions are amazing. And so I collect them on my website. So if you go to AJ's Quest or AJAYS.quest, you'll find my question bank. So you can go look at the questions and see some of the stuff I ask myself and other people. And just asking better questions will help as well. To give another story, like I was at an event in Singapore when I was building my career. And, someone was on the stage and they asked if anyone had any questions. And I decided to put my hand up and sound a little bit smart. So I asked a question about physics and I kind of set the tone a little bit. And the person standing next to me was like, wow, it's a very interesting question. Like I don't even remember what it was. It was something to do with physics. And I was trying to sound smart. So I was trying to stand out a little bit. I won't lie. And the guy next to me was like, that's really cool. Like, that's a really interesting question. We should chat. Turns out he was the managing director of a health company. He was really high up. He had like maybe, 1,000 people underneath him. And we ended up getting coffee. And so I met him at this hotel, very fancy, had the coffee. Nothing really came out of it, but it was just fascinating that like I could get that meeting just by being interesting and sort of attracting attention by asking good questions. So yeah, that's tip number 1. It's so powerful and it's so easy to do as well. Just be really curious and ask questions. Okay. The second one is really straightforward as well. It is to be the social nucleus. So oftentimes, I swear, like if you're organizing a group hangout with your friends, everyone's like, oh, I'm free Tuesday, I'm free Thursday, and like everyone's just trying to get it together, but it just doesn't work because no one is like putting the effort to organize it. And so you might be that person that's always stuck with the responsibility of like, okay, fine, I'll go book the restaurant, I'll go do this, that, right? But and maybe within your friend group, after 10 years, you're kind of tired of it. That's fine. But what you'll realize by taking that opportunity to do that, or being the person that does that, you actually build such positive karma within the space, right? Like if people just start attributing you to the guy that organizes stuff or the person that organizes stuff, and they get really excited, and they just have a more positive sentiment towards you. Okay. And so one of the things I did was when I was going to Singapore and I was trying to do the education space, I didn't actually have anyone in my network in the education space. And so I thought, all right, you know what? Like, if I just DM people, they may not respond to me, but let me try something a bit different. So I organized a party, so an edtech party. And what I did was I got a friend of mine who had a venue. I said like, hey, I'll sponsor the food and drinks, and you just like, if I can use your space, that'd be great. And I managed to get that venue, and then I started DMing people saying, hey, we're throwing a party for edtech founders, like come by. Like, and then once I got the first 3 or 4 people coming, I said, hey, so-and-so is coming, like you should come too. And then like people started inviting each other, and the response was so strange. It was like, a party for found, that's weird, like that's strange, is it not networking? No, we're just doing a party. And by the end of it, like my network grew about 30-40 people, interesting people in the space. Got a lot of coffees lined up afterwards, and there's a lot of positive attribution towards myself as well. And that wasn't the intention. I wasn't trying to be like, oh, everyone owes me one, but it just happens by taking the initiative and the effort to organize these things, right? And so whenever I see an opportunity where I can be the person to do the work and like build that positive relationship with people, I will take the effort. And sometimes it does take a lot of effort to organize. And I'll do small dinners where I just think that 5 or 6 people should meet each other, and I'll organize that, get them to meet each other. And there's definitely been amazing things that happen out of those dinners. So obviously, if you're more cash constrained and you can't afford to like book your own venue or something like that, it's just very easy to organize a dinner, right? And everyone can pay for themselves. Like you don't need to necessarily pay for everyone or figure out those things, but you can just organize an event or host something or just bring people together, right? And that could be an online community, it could be a Slack group, could be you could do a podcast, you can do a newsletter, just any way that you can aggregate people together and let them talk to each other, or you give them content for free, things like that, right? That's what I mean by being a social nucleus. People just come to you, right? And the third one, so number 3, this one's a little bit harder. It is just become interesting, right? Like people are attracted to other interesting people, right? And so just by being more interesting, people by virtue will want to talk to you, want to introduce you to other people, etc. Now, okay, that's all well and good if I say that you should be interesting. How do you do that? Well, one of the things you can do to be interesting is just to work on interesting projects or just cool projects, right? And it can be a hobby project, it can be fun. Often things that like random things I'm doing just like gets attention. So like I I bought a fossil and I mentioned that at a conference, and then people were like, oh dude, that's cool. Like you tell me about this fossil. Or I was doing Rubik's Cube for a bit. I was doing random things. And then, people would introduce me because they're like, oh, dude, I have a friend that does that. You should talk to them. And it just becomes this like way to like meet people, and like you have something. And like, obviously I've got a collection back here of collectibles, and that sometimes brings in, when I'm doing a call and like, oh, wow, that's a cool background. Tell me more. Right. It just brings more energy to the conversations, and people want to make introductions. I'll give you a specific example. So Jennifer on our team, some of you guys already know Jennifer. If you're in the entry-level community, you've definitely interacted with her, got an email from her before. She went from 0 to 49,000 Instagram subscribers and I think 17,000 newsletter subscribers within 2 weeks. And she started this thing called Unhinged Productivity Girl, which was just like a way to, she was just applying data science and data analytics to random things to be productive, but in a very unhinged and sometimes funny way, right? And that just got a lot of viral attention. That was interesting. And people flocked to her, and now she gets all these opportunities. And so that's a way that you can do that. Like, it doesn't need to be so complex, right? She just applied data analytics to basic parts of her life, and that was good content, and that went viral. And so you can try things like that, and it doesn't need to go viral. It just needs to be interesting enough for the next person to be like, oh yeah, I'll introduce you to this person, right? You can start a company, you can start a startup, you can do a project, you can code something really interesting, you can develop something interesting, and you'll build those circles. All right, I hope those 3 tips were helpful. I try to do something a little bit out of the box, not necessarily the specific tips that you would need to do, but I thought those are the 3 most important things for me, at least when I was building my network, and I think that is actionable that you could do. So I don't want this to be just another video that you listen to and you're like, oh, I'm inspired, I'm going to go do this thing. I actually want you to go do this thing. So pick any one of those 3 things. If it's questions, go look at my question bank and pick a couple of questions that you could use next time you go to a party. Organize an event, right? It can be just with your friends if you really want, and maybe they invite some friends as well. You can figure something out. And then the third thing is like, maybe like just think about what's interesting that you could do. Like anything, design a game, I don't know, publish something on LinkedIn, like just try something, right? And it may not go viral, may not get any attention, but if you do it long enough, it will definitely help you become interesting. Because there's a saying where, you know, you do one interesting thing, that thing is interesting. You do 2 interesting things, those things are interesting. But after you do 3 interesting things, that person is interesting, right? Or you're interesting. And so that's the point. Do enough interesting things, you'll become interesting. Anyway, good luck, and I'll see you in the next video. And please make sure you like and subscribe because it helps us, and I need to know if you guys are watching. Otherwise, it's going to be hard for me to commit to making more videos. I'll catch you later.